Okay, so I've got a mustache for the first time in my entire life, and I look both 54 and 12 at the same time, so deal with it. But I do want to talk about the PlayStation 5 Pro because I've been using it for the last week, and off the bat, I can definitely say this system is an enthusiast machine. And now, watching some of the other earlier reviews and stuff on the system, I noticed a lot of them just seem to constantly be comparing it to the PlayStation 5, which is fine, and I'll touch on that. But I still love this machine, so it sort of deserves its own dedicated review sort of thing, while also still comparing it to the PlayStation 5, if that makes sense. But to keep things short, spoiler, this machine is really just for the enthusiast who loves gaming through and through, and that sort of includes me. Now, people love to say, whenever I make a console video, whether it's my PlayStation, Xbox, or Xbox Series S, whatever the hell it might be, people love to say, why don't you just buy a PC? Dude, I have literally 3 PCs. I just love console gaming at the same time. It's almost like that's a crime nowadays. But honestly, for myself, as somebody who spends like 14 hours a day at a desk using a mouse and keyboard between my day job, content creation, and anything else, sometimes I just want to pick up a game controller, melt into my chair or my couch or whatever else, and just enjoy some gaming that's less pressure, if that makes sense. Just being able to pick up a controller at the end of a long day and absolutely ruin someone else's day in Call of Duty or Overwatch sounds like a good time to me. And a quick thanks to Ultimea for sponsoring a portion of today's video, but more on them in a bit. Now, when it comes down to the PlayStation 5 Pro specifically, the reason why it's sort of special to me, at least, is the fact that I always want more from my gaming consoles. I love the experience, but there could always be more oomph to the hardware, especially as somebody who loves gaming on PC, and I'm sort of used to the hardware behind the 40 series GPUs and all the wild CPUs out there. Like I mentioned, as somebody who plays PC, and I'm used to the sort of graphics and fidelity that a 40 series GPU can give me, anything that will bring the console experience a little bit closer to PC, I'm all for it. That isn't to say PCs don't have their place, because obviously they stomp on the PlayStation 5 or the PlayStation 5 Pro, but inching that gap a little bit closer is definitely awesome, particularly for somebody who doesn't already have a console. So really, why it's special is the fact that if the PlayStation 5 can inch ever so closer to the category of how a PC can perform for even less money than a PC, I'm all for it. Now, I also know there are videos out there right now where people are creating PC killer builds and stuff for, you know, $600, $700, $800, and that's fine. But I fried my PC trying to build it, so I'm clearly not the demographic who should be building PCs like I used to. So where does the PlayStation 5 come into the mix? Somebody who's simply not going to build a PC because not everybody's going to. In my actual video reviews, I don't particularly dive into tech specs and benchmarks and all that fun stuff, but when it comes down to actually using it, I definitely do appreciate a better performance and a better fidelity in graphics, and the PlayStation 5 gives me both of those. Now, I will say as well, it's not specific to the PlayStation 5 Pro, but whenever I turn that system on, I'm not doing anything else except relaxing. What that means for me, at least, is that I'm easily distracted when I'm on my PC. I alt-tab, I start watching some videos. I don't particularly get really immersed into a game. I think the last PC game I got really immersed into was Red Dead 2, and I haven't really had that experience since then, except when I'm on my game consoles. Whenever I turn on my console, in this case the PlayStation 5 Pro, I'm not doing anything else except getting immersed into whatever game I'm playing at that time and just enjoying myself without any pressures to do anything else. That's just me. It's a little bit niche, but that's a reason why the PlayStation 5 Pro is a bit special to me. And again, if this all sort of sounds dumb to you, the PlayStation 5 Pro is probably not meant for you, and you might already know that. Now, as for how I did test out the PlayStation 5 Pro over the last week, I had the chance to throw it into my TV setup in the living room on a Samsung S95D, incredible OLED TV. I threw it up on a fat 120-inch screen with a JM Go projector. That was nuts. As well as my desk setup up in my bedroom, which is, I'm actually still using a 1440p LG OLED in my bedroom. And again, everything sort of just looked awesome with the new Pro Fidelity modes, and it actually is noticeable. For a projector setup at least, you're using an absolutely massive screen, so the boost in fidelity is definitely more noticeable on that sort of size of a display versus the normal PlayStation 5. If you're gaming on a massive 120-inch screen and you actually are trying to peep some differences, it's going to be more noticeable on a display like that. Or a wall, I don't even know if you can call it a display. Either way, playing on a massive projector was absolutely awesome, particularly the more cinematic titles like Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us, mainly because, again, those games are particularly targeting 60 Hz on the new Pro modes or whatever you want to call them, and the PSSR does an incredible job upscaling and it looks badass on a massive projector. I know projectors are a little bit more niche. I absolutely love them, especially for console gaming, and they definitely do the job well, and the PlayStation 5 Pro looked incredible on here. Now, the second thing, I think it might have been my favorite way to play my PlayStation 5 Pro so far at least, is on my living room setup, which is a Samsung S95D like I mentioned. Honestly, that TV, again, it's gonna cap at 120 Hertz when I'm playing certain games like X-Defiant or whatever else, Overwatch. But honestly, on there, I found the brightness, the fidelity, the screen size, maybe, I think might have been the perfect mix between the new modes on the PlayStation 5 Pro, but everything simply looked amazing. And I might be gushing or fanboying, but that's just the truth for me at least. And lastly, something a little bit more surprising was the fact that there was a noticeable difference compared to my PlayStation 5 on my 1440p display. I figured it's gonna be less resolution, so there's not much of a reason to get the PlayStation 5 Pro, but the actual fidelity behind the actual game you're playing, it is noticeable. Whether or not you wanna put that on a 1440p display, that's totally up to you, your budget, your setup, and everything else in between, but I actually thought it was pretty sweet and I actually enjoyed it. The only thing is, my specific LG monitor in my bedroom at least, the only downside I think is that there's no built-in speakers on that setup, which is where today's channel sponsor, Ultimea, comes in. I do wanna give them a huge thanks because they did send out this B30 Solo, which is a 120 watt soundbar, and it's incredibly tiny. Again, for me at least in my setup, this thing's kind of nuts, especially considering the size. Not only is this soundbar only 60 bucks at the time of making this video, but considering its size, it's bumping a massive 120 watts of peak power. With a 3-inch sub built in and 2.1 channel sound, it's pretty impressive considering the size of this thing, especially when playing cinematic titles in my setup. It looks minimal, it sounds great, and it's actually pretty functional with the dedicated remote, not to mention you can always use the Ultimea app for any sort of EQ settings you might want to further improve your sound experience. This soundbar can connect to your setup through audio jack, USB, optical, which is what I'm using with my LG monitor, and even Bluetooth. I will have this soundbar linked down below in the video description, and thanks again to Ultimea for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Now, like I mentioned, I think between the three setups, whether it's the projector, desk setup, or TV, I think the TV might have been my favorite setup. It could be a placebo or something, but man, again, everything on the PlayStation 5 Pro so far looks awesome. Again, I'm not really a pixel peeper and I'm not really zooming in 40 times to really compare things side by side, but either my TV did some serious heavy lifting or all the new features on the PlayStation 5 Pro actually do make that big a difference. So from a gaming standpoint, yeah, there's definitely a difference between the OG PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Pro. Whether or not those little extras make a difference for you specifically, that's totally gonna be up to you, because I know a lot of people don't care. That said, the PlayStation 5 is not automatically bad just because the PlayStation 5 Pro came out. I love the PS5 and I still use my PlayStation 5 Slim on my basement TV. Still, all these side-by-side comparisons on YouTube, while they definitely have their value, I think it's one of those things you sort of have to see for yourself in person and make a personal decision. And again, it's not particularly special to the PlayStation 5 Pro, but man, I still love DualSense, what they've done with the controller. Between the haptics, the built-in microphone and speaker, and the triggers are still insane when it comes down to any sort of game you're playing. I just love DualSense and it pretty much craps on just about anything else. If you haven't had a chance to try the PlayStation, that's probably one of my favorite features, bar none. And somebody might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the controller that comes with the PlayStation 5 Pro might be the DualSense with the larger battery, because either my old remote totally degraded in terms of the actual battery life, or the new ones just have a longer battery life. I don't know, somebody correct me, you might know more than I. Now, when it comes down to the actual build and design of the PlayStation 5 Pro, I'm neither here nor there. It sort of looks whatever to me. It's got the shark gills going on, and it has a popped collar to the max, and it's probably fixing for some fresh gabagool. If you understand that reference, congrats, you're probably pretty old, and your back probably hurts when you sneeze, and you need to get your prostate checked. Still, from a design standpoint, yeah, the PlayStation 5 Pro is a bit bigger, but it's also still smaller than the OG PlayStation 5, if that makes a difference at all for you. The only thing that seems to bug me at all with the PlayStation 5 Pro, which is also the same as the PlayStation 5 Slim, is the placement of the HDMI cable. This probably means nothing to the majority of people, but the HDMI is just a little bit further away from the power cable, and that bugs me when it comes down to cable management. But yeah, that's just something weird for me. Either way, the console looks pretty decent, and I'm looking forward to any sort of third-party dark plates. Hopefully those do show up soon. Now, when it comes down to all the other stuff on the PS5 Pro, it's practically identical to the regular PlayStation 5 or PS5 Slim. The UI is clean, it's usable, all the apps are there that you might want for media. I still love my PlayStation consoles for using it for music, YouTube. Again, when I turn that console on, I'm doing nothing but relaxing and entertaining, so I've got all the media apps on my PS5. It's just one of those things that's sort of easy to take for granted once you get used to it, but I still actively appreciate it every single day. Now, the question is, when it comes down to the PS5 Pro, should you buy it? And that is definitely a hard question to answer. I think the main thing comes down to the fact that all the big stores have good return policies. Just keep that in mind when you're making a decision, because you could pick up a PS5 Pro, try it, compare it to your PlayStation 5 if you already have one, or if you're PC gaming and you're like, all right, this is pretty shit, I don't want it anymore, just return it. You're definitely okay to do that. But something to keep in mind if you are considering buying a PlayStation 5 Pro is the fact that you could instead buy a regular PlayStation 5 or a PlayStation 5 Slim on sale. There are sales right now for like Black Friday and stuff. You could also buy a PlayStation Portal and still have anywhere between 50 to 80 bucks left over to buy a couple games. Just something to be mindful of in that sense. Again, like I mentioned before, just because the PS5 Pro is out doesn't automatically make the PlayStation 5 Slim or the OG PlayStation 5 bad by any means whatsoever, because for the majority of people, it is going to be a beyond incredible experience. Again, especially if it's your first time console experience, or if you're an Xbox or PC owner and you're thinking about getting something on the Sony side of things, you could definitely get away with the regular PlayStation. That said, if you're an enthusiast like myself and you just dig all things gaming, this could be a sweet upgrade. If you have the extra funds, you could sell your PlayStation 5, pick up the PlayStation 5 Pro, you can keep them both. That's nobody's business but yours, but I do think it's a pretty badass console, and so far I've enjoyed my time with it. I'm gonna have some more content. I'm gonna talk more about the PlayStation 5 because I have a whole lot of stuff coming up about it, and so definitely keep tuned for that. So the key thing for me, at least the takeaway for the PlayStation 5 Pro is, yeah, it is a badass console, but it is hella pricey, and it's still cheaper than a PC, so just something to keep in mind. Appreciate you guys watching till the end. Until next time.